Next Gen Leaders. Thank you very much for joining me today. My name is Gabrielle Ellebrock, and I recruit for our early talent opportunities here at Thermo Fisher Scientific. I was also a previous intern with the company, so I'm a living testimony that an internship is a great way to kickstart your career with us. And to start us off, I'll quickly review what's on the agenda and then dig into the presentation. So first off, I'll do a quick intro as to who I am and my career trajectory with Thermo Fisher, then transition into a quick company overview. Then we'll review our early talent opportunities and the next steps for keeping in touch. With that, I'll segue into why we're all here today with discussing how to build your personal brand, and then transition into how knowing your MBTI or Myers-Briggs type indicator profile applies towards setting the foundation for your brand. Finally, we'll wrap with a live Q&A. So a little bit about me. I've had an on and off again relationship with Thermo Fisher. My first internship was back in 2010, and then again in 2011, focusing on diversity and inclusion. In my role, I conducted mixed methods research, analyzing demographic case studies, and evaluating thought leadership among the Fortune 500 to determine D&I best practices in order to create a training curriculum for senior leadership. Essentially, the training was designed to help our leadership team learn how to implement and manage these D&I strategies to drive organizational prosperity and ultimately create a sense of belonging for our colleagues. At the time of my second internship, I was in the midst of grad school, so I went back to school and then came back to Thermo Fisher in 2014 as a contractor supporting our business continuity team to develop on-site protocols, SOPs, and facilitate various trainings across different departments. I ultimately left the role when I was near the end of completing my doctorate degree and had to kick it into high gear to write my dissertation. Then I came back for good this time after I was officially done with school and joined the talent acquisition team. Since then, I've had a variety of roles and experiences across talent acquisition. And as you know, I'm currently partnering with university relations and early talent to engage next-gen leaders and support the evolution of our organization and empower you all to discover how you can thrive at Thermo Fisher. All of this to say that I've had an unconventional academic journey and a non-traditional path in navigating my career with the company, but I've always had a vision as to how to go about it, which is a perfect segue into why I'm hosting this session on personal branding. And also, before I forget, if you scan the QR code on the slide, it will direct you to my LinkedIn profile so we can stay connected. So who is Thermo Fisher Scientific? At our core, our purpose is to enable our customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. We accomplish this by being the world leader in serving science and having a strong core value system comprised of integrity, intensity, innovation, and involvement. We work with integrity by honoring commitments, communicating openly, and demonstrating the highest ethical standards. We have a distinctive intensity and deliver results with speed, excellence, and passion. We harness innovation by creating value and transforming ideas into differentiated products and services for our customers. And we nurture involvement by working together as one global team, embracing unique perspectives to enhance our culture of diversity and inclusion, and learning how to leverage each other's unique strengths. Our global team of more than 130,000 colleagues delivers an unrivaled combination of innovative technologies, purchasing convenience, and pharmaceutical services through our industry-leading brands. Regardless of which field, we have 5,700 focused experts and scientists in-house that collaborate to create the best solutions possible for our customers. And when it comes to investing in our future, we invest $1.4 billion annually into research and development. And with approximately $40 billion in revenue as a Fortune 100 company with over 2.5 million products, we're definitely not going anywhere. So when it comes to our CSR strategy, because I know there's a lot on this slide, for a high-level overview, we serve over 1 million patients per day, impacting 80 countries to ensure that they have proper air quality, partner with over 50 countries to ensure the safety of others by regulating food quality and medicinal efficiency. And essentially, by driving innovation and compassion, we're all able to win together. Also, at Thermo Fisher Scientific, diversity and inclusion is not just something we do, it's who we are. We actively shape a culture where differences are truly valued, authenticity is a state of being, and everyone feels they belong and can do their best work. To meet our 2030 vision, we realize that we need an incredibly talented global team that brings diverse perspectives, collaborative energy, and a passion to excel every day. And our global workforce has a tremendous mix of diverse experiences, perspectives, backgrounds, and characteristics. We know that when every voice is heard and every idea is explored, we're better able to innovate, serve our customers, and lead in our markets. So now we're going to go into our early talent opportunities, which consist of internships, co-ops, and our leadership development programs. So our internships provide hands-on experiences within our highly collaborative culture. Students have the opportunity to learn about the latest industry innovations and partner with different leadership personas from project managers all the way up to vice presidents. Interns will usually contribute to 2 to 3 projects across the 10 to 12-week duration. And as a final assignment, you'll have the opportunity to formally present your key learnings and make future recommendations to ensure that your work has a lasting impact. Additionally, at Thermo Fisher, we're looking to have our early talent demographic represent 25% of our workforce and encourage our intern managers to extend full-time offers up to a year in advance in order to secure top-tier talent post-graduation. So don't be surprised if you walk away with an offer in hand at the end of your internship. And also, please make sure to mark your calendars. All our roles are posted back in September, and our recruiting season ends March 31st of 2023. Regarding our leadership development programs, our LDPs are designed as best-in-class opportunities and offer a spectrum of experiences across our functions. LDP participants will spend 2 years in rotational assignments that range from 6 to 12 months at various Thermo Fisher sites, and also rotate across multiple groups, divisions, and business units across our functional areas. Participants will also have the opportunity to contribute their unique expertise to real value-added work. You'll attend various functional and leadership development training sessions, have dedicated assignment managers and mentors, and at the end of the program, you'll transition into a permanent role at one of our locations in a manager position as an individual contributor. If you're looking to join as a people manager, that will be the next step after this program, but this basically cuts your journey about in half. Coming straight out of university, typically it might take you maybe 5 to 5.5 years to get to a manager role. But again, by being part of an LDP participant, that cuts the time in half, 2 years, boom, you're in a manager role. So when it comes to next steps, be sure to search and apply to our opportunities by visiting jobs.thermofisher.com. And we would also love for you to follow us on social media and see what our colleagues are sharing. So now we're going to go into building your personal brand. So I know there's a lot on this slide, but I'm going to go through it and we'll make it digestible. So essentially, the true concept and meaning of brand is not a specific product or service. Brand is an emotion, perception, memory, or experience, and everyone has what's known as a personal brand. You mean something to everyone in your life, and that meaning is your brand. Essentially, your brand is what the people around you perceive you to be. And if there's a gap between who you think you are and who other people think you are, it's important to close that gap as part of your personal brand management campaign. For example, businesses use brand management techniques to build solid, lasting relationships with their customers, and you can do the same thing. By leveraging business-oriented principles, you can effectively manage your personal brand. So for example, when it comes to attributes and dimensions, strong brands are relevant, distinctive, and consistent. So essentially, the value your brand represents matter to the organization, audience, and people that you're engaging. And then for distinction, when you believe in something and commit to action on the basis of what you believe, you're creating a strong, distinctive brand. When it comes to consistency, you want to ensure that you're delivering the same quality of experience every time, which adds credibility and confirms expectations for others to trust your brand. When it comes to dimension, the 3 dimensions of brand are competency, standard, and style. So your actions are meeting general expectations to demonstrate capability. The level of quality you deliver is sustained across time, and the level of quality you accept from others as well. And finally, with style, your personal image and work aesthetic is always on point and true to who you are. Here at Thermo Fisher, we have an amazing campaign known as My Work is a Story of, as you can see on the right side of the slide. And this campaign features our employees that have successfully managed their personal brand across the organization and serve as a cultural ambassador for their field. Here you can see one of our product engineers who identifies her brand as being one of inclusion, since her work focuses on developing inclusive products for both our internal colleagues and our range of customers. So again, I know I threw a lot of information on you on that last slide, so I'm going to just continue to break some things down for the content that's on this slide to make sure you get a good grasp on the concept of personal brand and how to build it from the ground up. So first off, I want to address a misconception about branding. There's still a lot of people who believe that personal branding can come across as inauthentic or disingenuous. However, it's important to keep in mind that a narrative or personal brand that is not shaped by you will inevitably be formed and told by others, which could potentially do more harm than good. So essentially, a personal brand is an intersection of perception and reality, and it reflects your personality, unique passions and interests as expressed by you. To help better define what is personal brand, let's talk about the concepts of voice and tone. Our voice is unique, authentic, and recognizable by our peers, managers, parents, etc. But we also have many tones in our lives. These tones represent the variety of ways we interact with many people through different contexts and with different intents of purpose. So for example, in a conversation with a parent, you may want to demonstrate respect, while in a conversation with a manager, you might be wanting to convey and demonstrate leadership. So your voice stays true to who you are, regardless of the person, but the way you express it through tone will vary. So how can you incorporate personal brand into your life? There's the three concepts of embrace, create, and grow. With embrace, start by embracing your identity, your adversity, your diversity, your whole self. Only then can people know who you are. And vulnerability is actually an opportunity to build genuine connections with others. Regarding create, start creating value for your audience and your network. In other words, consume and curate good, relevant content that communicates purpose. When you create value for others, people will be able to tangibly see your value, and you'll become top of mind across your network as a subject matter expert. And I know this can sound like a lot, even overwhelming. And some of you out there might be thinking, you know, I'm not a content creator or influencer. I don't really have a lot to talk about or show. Well, think about this. Think about the influencers and content creators you watch on YouTube. If you wanted to know more about a product, you could really just read the reviews online. So you're not really watching these people to know about the products themselves. You're watching them because you want to hear their perspective on the product. Their voice, body language, and mannerisms make whatever they're selling more personable and relatable. So these creators are literally giving you the same information you can get anywhere else, but they're giving it to you in a way that's more digestible, in a way that you would rather hear it from them than someone else. The same can be said for you. Creating valuable content doesn't necessarily mean reinventing the wheel. Rather, it means learning how to describe and talk about the wheel in a way that's unique to you, that will attract the audience you want to reach. A lot of people think personal branding is a numbers game that's reliant on how many people you know. However, it's more about depth versus width. So it's about how well you know the people you know and how well you engage them and the added value you bring to them by knowing them. Being successful at personal branding essentially means being successful at building relationships. And relationship building is best expressed as a 50-30-20 rule. So 50% of your time should be spent with people you aspire to be, like leaders in your industry. 30% should be spent with people who are in your proximity. So for example, people who are your colleagues or peers who are going through your career journey with you. And then 20% should be spent paying it forward to people who look up to you or people you could help in some way, maybe through a mentorship. And as you advance your career, ideally, you'll be able to flip this concept and spend 50% of your time paying it forward. Now we're going to dig into the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI typology and brand application. So you're probably wondering why I asked for you all to take the 16 personalities assessment. And at its core, the 16 personalities is a version of MBTI. Essentially, the MBTI assesses 8 personality preferences that describe 4 activities. Core preferences, one selected from each activity, are arranged into 16 unique types to better understand an individual's personality. And by determining which of the 16 types is associated with the individual's personality, people are empowered to discover and evolve their habits, communication styles, interpersonal relationships, and other behavioral elements, both personally and professionally. So by having a foundational basis of knowing your personality type, you're better positioned to lean into building out your brand in terms of how you want to communicate your value in a way that's authentic to you. And here on this slide, you get an idea of what seem to be opposing, but really are complementary strengths across the MBTI spectrum. So for example, I'll go on the next slide as well, but I'm an INTJ, so it'll be introversion, intuition, thinking, and judging. Some of you might have been an ENFP, for example, which is supposed to be my polar opposite. So you're extroverted, you have intuition as well, feeling, and perceiving. And this is just showing the different dimensions of how they translate as to what that means. So for example, this dimension, extroverted versus introverted, talks about how you want to direct and receive energy. Sensing versus intuition is about how you prefer to take in information. Thinking versus feeling is how you prefer to make decisions and conclusions. And finally, judging and perceiving is how you prefer to approach the outside world. So like I mentioned, I'm an INTJ, and the descriptions below, which I got from the 16 personalities assessment, are some of the ways that INTJs are typically characterized. And I've chosen to focus on translating each one into adjectives that best describe me in order to communicate my value. So for example, here in this first one, it says that INTJs are rational and quick-witted. They're also known as architects, and they pride themselves in their ability to think for themselves, not to mention their uncanny knack for seeing right through phoniness and hypocrisy. So for me, when I think about what does that translate into of how I can market myself and market my personal brand, to me, all that says is I'm an objective thinker. For the second paragraph, it says architects question everything. Many personality types trust the status quo, relying on conventional wisdom and other people's expertise to guide their lives. In their quest to find better ways of doing things, architects aren't afraid to break the rules or risk disapproval. In fact, they'd rather enjoy it. True statement. Again, when I translate this and try to figure out how to market that, I think that really translates into being entrepreneurial and having an entrepreneurial spirit. And then finally, one of the key indicators for an INTJ is that they bring a single-minded drive to their work, applying the full force of their insight, logic, and willpower. And again, I translate this into having a strategic drive overall. What I really like about the Myers-Briggs, but the 16 personalities assessment is that they even show like different celebrities, fictional or real characters that may or may not identify with you. So for example, one of them that I really liked is that I got Gandalf the Grey because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. And he was always one of my favorite characters. So when I got INTJ and Gandalf, that kind of was the highlight of that result. So with that in mind, consider the other people that identify with your personality type and think about how you would describe them. So when you're thinking about how to best translate these paragraphs into adjectives that describe you, think about what adjectives describe some of the people that were identified as relating to you based on your personality type. So as a takeaway from today's session, start thinking about how you can translate your value based on your personality type, and then identify how you can embrace, create, and grow your brand. So that's the end of my presentation. I want to thank you all for your time today, and I certainly hope this has been helpful. And now I'd like to open it up to reviewing the Q&A, some of the answers, or some of the, sorry, not answers, some of the questions that I'll answer that have already come in. And then also feel free to take yourself off mute as well. And just as a shout out, for one of the previous sessions I had regarding personal branding, I know I got a lot of questions of, how do I translate my brand into adjectives? For those of you who took the 16 personalities assessment in advance, I'm more than happy to help you translate, like, what does this mean for me? Like, I'm an ISTJ, for example, and it said X, Y, and Z about me. What does that look like? How do I market that to other people? Or if you're interested about your results, how those apply to you, or just anything interested about maybe our early talent opportunities, maybe you've applied to roles, seen roles. It could be a little bit of everything that I presented today on the slide deck.
Will there be an opportunity to complete the personality assessment after this presentation?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can do that on your own time. It's not affiliated with Thermo Fisher Scientific in any way. It's just a tool that, again, it's very easily accessible. It's a free tool. You just type in Google like 16 personalities and it'll pop up for you. I see another question came in. Let's see, this one's from Mackenzie, and it's asking, how do you discern the difference between your personal life and your brand? I'm assuming your values cross over, but I worry it may be hard to draw the line between the two. So I would say your personal brand is definitely like the best version of yourself. I know some people think, like I mentioned with influencer culture and like content creators, that it may be a little bit contrived or inauthentic. But when you're in like the corporate atmosphere, for example, I heavily leverage LinkedIn when I talk about, what's going on like at work, things that I'm promoting, like as part of my role, or just things that are outside of my role that I'm passionate about. So that I would say, yes, are they my personal passions? Absolutely. And I'm cross promoting them as part of my brand. So there should always be a level of correlation. Of course, part of your brand isn't saying, this is my day every minute of the day, and this is what I'm going through. That again is like your personal private life, which you may or may not want to share. I know I talked about like vulnerability, and that could be an element, but that's up to your discretion. So I would say don't feel compelled to share everything that's going on with your life. Again, that's private to you. But if there are certain things that are a little bit more vulnerable that will help and empower others who may be struggling with similar things, then I would challenge you to make that a little bit more visible and figure out how you want to tell that story in a way that's authentic to you. And then Edith came in with a question. So how do you know how to recognize what your personal brand is? So I would say, similar to this presentation, think about the things that you're really passionate about and think about the things that you really enjoy on the day-to-day. And for example, one of the reasons why I ask people to take the 16 personalities assessment is to get an idea and help that serve as a foundation, because it talks about, how you prefer to communicate. Like you saw for me as an INTJ, like how do I prefer to communicate, interpret things, make decisions, etc. Like all those things give you a great foundation. And I would also challenge you guys to take multiple leadership assessments in addition to the MBTI with 16 personalities. There's also the Clifton Strengths Finder. And I really love that assessment because it comes from a model of positive psychology where it gives like a top 5 strengths that you have amongst a list of 34. So for example, one of my top 5 strengths is like connectedness, intellection, deliberative, achiever, and then consistency. So those are all different facets of my personality. But again, because it comes from that model of positive psychology, it's talking about the things that I'm naturally good at and strong at and how to continue to hone those things. So when you discover different parts of yourself and become more self-aware of like, what is my MBTI through 16 personalities? What is my Clifton Strengths Finder? There's another one out there called DISC. All those facets contribute to you realizing what your personal brand is. Again, it's like, what am I naturally good at? What am I known for? What's my reputation maybe like as a student with faculty and other colleagues, right? Other students in your class, or like maybe at work. Maybe you're doing like an internship. What's your reputation there? Or maybe you're doing like a retail position. I know I had multiple retails during undergrad. But think about kind of like a 360 assessment of like, what do I enjoy? What am I known for? What are people's perception of me? And that's where I talked about like your personal brand management campaign. If there's a mismatch between who you think you are and other people think you are, then you want to figure out like, why is there a gap, and try to manage that gap to the best of your ability. So these are all foundational things to help discover what your personal brand is, and you can just hone that over time as well. So I hope that was helpful. And this one comes in from Benjamin. It says, how does Thermo Fisher view ENTPs? Okay, that's a great question. So there's no specific viewpoint on like whatever your personality type is. I know I talked about diversity and inclusion, and so we all have complementary strengths to offer. One personality type is not better than another. It may lend itself more easily to supporting a certain function or skill set. For example, I know on the 16 personalities, it says, oh, if you're like an ENTP, you may be very successful in like these types of roles when you get into corporate, right? Or like these types of opportunities. And that's definitely helpful, but that's not like the end all be all of what you should be doing. It's just like a rough guideline to help you determine what you might be naturally inclined or gifted at doing and what you should potentially explore. So at Thermo Fisher, it's not really necessarily what's your personality type. We don't use that for like assessing employee strengths personally. That's more for you to know. And so when you're having these conversations during like an interview, or maybe you're already like an employee with us and you're talking about like how to develop professionally, that's more for you to know and be like an empowerment feature in your toolkit for advancing your career with us. So again, no unique views on ENTPs or any other personality type. It's more about how you leverage your uniqueness to continue to grow and also help contribute back to the company, like I mentioned, when it comes to diversity inclusion and being collaborative, innovative, and helping us continue to have organizational prosperity. This next question comes from Tom. And so he's asking, as an INFJ, how should I approach searching for a job and interviewing? So again, just to have a little bit of clarity around personality types. So yes, there are definitely things that are unique to you regarding like searching for jobs and interviewing. That's a standard universal practice across, regardless of what personality type you are. I would say just be mindful of whatever the parameters are for that organization. So like I mentioned, for us, if you're looking for an early talent opportunity at Thermo Fisher Scientific, apply, the sooner the better. We ideally want to fill about 70%, if not more, of our 500 plus opportunities by the end of this year. So, which is just upon us in like another 3 or 3.5 weeks. But our deadline for reviewing applications and making offers is March 31st of next year, 2023. So I would say whatever the guidelines are for that particular organization, just make sure that you're mindful of that. When it comes to interviewing, though, this is when you can tailor that experience according to your personality type. So like I mentioned with the previous question about like getting a good foundation into like having that self-awareness as to what your personality type is, what your strengths are, things of that nature, what you're passionate about, what you enjoy. As you're going through the interview process, having that foundational knowledge about digging into yourself and again, gaining that more clarity of mind and self-awareness as to who you are, that you can for sure leverage during the interview process. So for example, usually something that I'll start with is I'll ask a student, why this opportunity with Thermo Fisher Scientific, right? And of course, I'm looking to hear that the student has done their research, they're interested in our mission and vision and how that practically applies to them. But then you can also build upon that, talking about your unique personality style, again, the things that you enjoy, what you're looking to do, how your uniqueness will contribute to what we're looking to do as a company and this particular role. So again, having that platform of being, self-aware, knowing your strengths can really easily lend itself to better marketing your transferable skills into the role that you're looking for during the interview process. So I hope that was helpful. Let's see. This question comes from Allison. It says, any advice to someone pursuing the human resource field? What aspects of the field are your favorite? That's a great question because that's exactly what I did as an intern, and I'm still in HR. So I would say my favorite aspect it's a combination. So technically I'm under the talent acquisition team, which I love and I have the most experience in, but I also do some cross-functional work with talent management. So I love a hybrid of both, of one, recruiting and retaining talent, but also developing like learning curriculum and development opportunities. So I would say, Allison, if you'd like to come off mute to dig into that a little bit more than happy to see, what you're uniquely interested in. But I would say any application across HR is going to be valuable and give you a huge set of transferable skills because there's so many facets within HR. But my two favorite are talent acquisition and talent management because I think they correlate really beautifully into each other in terms of how they can lift each other up and also empower our colleagues to really live out their best selves when they're here at work. And again, part of my favorite aspect of being in HR is the ability to empower others to become the best versions of themselves in the professional arena. And sometimes that even transitions over to the personal arena as well, which is just very humbling and meaningful when that happens.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate you answering that for me. I was just wondering for onboarding if there's a lot of like group work with other team members, if you can give me any information on that. Because I like onboarding, I've had some experience with it, but I just wanted to know deeper in if you do any group work with other team.
Okay, got it. So you mean like if you're onboarding new employees, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So for onboarding, we have a few things. So one, I've also been a part of this as well, is our new colleague ambassador program. So that's a 90-day program. So basically anyone who comes into the organization is paired up with someone who's been a little more tenured in their role. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a mentor-mentee relationship, but they're just kind of paired up together to serve as a general guide as to how to best transition into their role. That could be someone who might be, and when I say tenured, I mean, in terms of experience, that may or may not be someone who's a little bit older than you or younger than you. For example, I have been paired up with someone who was younger than me by about like 10 years, but also someone who's been older than me by about 15. It's more about like valuing the experience that current employee has and how they can best like transfer that knowledge into an incoming employee. So I really love that because it can be very eye-opening depending on who you're paired up with. But onboarding, I would say, with the new colleague ambassador program typically consists of the full 90-day period, but also as a new employee. So let's say, Allison, you're in that HR position, you're with talent management and you're running onboarding programming. So part of that is like consistent feedback with people from talent management across HR and people in talent acquisition as well. So HR is basically the greater function that houses talent management, talent acquisition, operations, enablement, things of that nature. So all of those really come into play during those first 90 days. So to answer your question in short, yes, you do partner with other people across the HR function to make sure that it's a seamless onboarding process for that employee coming in.
Great. Thank you so much for that. That was really insightful.
Sure, of course, you're welcome. And then let's see. This one comes from Catherine. So she's saying that she started off as an exercise science major and then switched into HR at the end of my sophomore year. How would a background in science help with HR at Thermo Fisher? So that'd be super valuable. So since we are a biotech company, of course, having some life sciences experience, whether that's exercise science, biomedical engineering, chemistry, industrial, whatever that is, having life science experience is really great because that can translate into how you communicate with like your colleagues, future employees, etc., by having, a taste of that experience. Also, I know I get this question fairly often, which reminds me of Catherine's question, but where someone comes in and says, maybe I don't have a previous internship or a lot of work experience, and I'm looking to get an internship with Thermo Fisher Scientific, how do I best market myself? So when you're building out your resume, we're definitely looking, for character as well. So I would say whatever experience you do have, make sure you're marketing it as like a tangible contribution. And by that, I mean, like when you're going through your experiences, use a lot of numerics or metrics. So for example, if you're like increase productivity by X% at your job, or maybe like, if you worked in retail like I did, interacted with X amount of clients, per month, or increased sales by X amount a month per week, or something to that effect. Just something that shows the tangible contributions that you're making and the roles that you have. For example, I know I mentioned to Allison, I was a 2-time intern in HR within Thermo Fisher Scientific. And when I came in, my experience was, being a camp leader for the YMCA. I was doing multiple retail positions, and I didn't have any like formal corporate internships prior to my first internship as like a rising junior with Thermo Fisher. So I just basically figured out how to leverage all my transferable skills to tell the story as to how I could contribute, going forward. And again, like I mentioned earlier, about using your personality profile to talk about your unique contributions. I personally had already taken like the MBTI and like Clifton's and all those things. So I'm giving you the same advice that I personally did, where I leveraged those tools and my previous experiences to say, this is what's unique to me. This is the added value I bring to the organization. Because of course, some of the questions I got of like, oh, well, we see you don't have, any previous internships, like why this opportunity with Thermo Fisher. And also at that time, I wasn't an HR major by any means, which is why I love to share my unconventional academic journey on that first couple slides, where I started as a philosophy major, then I went into, religion with a concentration in theology, and then my final degree was in organizational leadership. So that was like the corporate application of all the humanities things that I had studied before. But when I remember I had a conversation with that recruiter, she's looking at my resume and saying, okay, you have a philosophy degree, you don't have previous corporate internships, why this opportunity? And I was able to speak to that and say, this is my unique background, again, added value of what I could bring. This is what I'm looking to do long-term. So make sure you have that elevator pitch, which I know you've probably heard of from career centers day in, day out. Make sure you have that elevator pitch fairly high, fairly refined and tuned. So that way, when people are asking you those questions, they're not left wanting for a response. And then let's see, this one comes to, Stefan again. So he's asking, where it pertains to voice and tonality, is there a direct correlation to potential clients in a business format, like a call center, for example? And also, does a personal brand, which is unique to one's individualism, align with potential clients, which can reciprocate to sales? Okay, so that was a long one. Let me break that down again. Okay, I'm going to break it down into two parts. Okay, so where it pertains to voice and tonality, is there a direct correlation to potential clients in a business format? So yes. So for example, like what I mentioned, you always have like the same voice, but a different tone, and it depends on what audience you have. So for example, when I'm communicating to people at work in my personal life, or just like going about my day, I would say I have like a base level tone. But it depends who at work I'm talking to. So if it's my peers, it's probably going to be very similar to how I would articulate to someone in my personal life, like how I'm talking to you all. But when I'm talking to, leadership or like VPs or something to that effect, I switch up my tone a little bit and to make it more receptive to them, right? Like I know what they're looking for, what's going to help influence them, what's going to help them, trust what I'm saying and to move forward and making decisions, right, in a timely manner. So that's where you have the inflection points of your voice to serve in different tones, again, depending on who you're speaking to. And then the second part of your question was, does a personal brand, which is unique to one's individualism, align with potential clients, which can reciprocate to sales? Yes, absolutely. And that's not just unique to sales. That could be to any, function that you support, whether that's sales, like marketing, research and development, operations, like the whole spectrum of what we have available. But yes, so that uniqueness of you could potentially align with like potential clients. So again, part of like knowing your personal brand is also having those leadership assessment tools, like I mentioned, 16 Personalities and Clifton's. So for example, like one of my key strengths, as I mentioned before with Clifton StrengthsFinder, is like connectedness, right? So that goes really well hand in hand with relationship building and practicing active listening and being able to, empathize and sympathize with others in a way that's authentic to me. But basically, it helps me demonstrate compassion very effectively, which makes me come across, more approachable overall when interacting with people. Another strength, not particularly mine, but one that's like really great, is called charisma. That's with StrengthsFinder. And so, Stefan, to your question about like, how to market that with sales. So people who are great in charisma are usually those people who are highly extroverted. They tend to be like maybe theater majors, drama majors, public relations, anything that's very external facing, whether it's, in the creative space or more business space. But people with that strength tend to be really good at influencing and again, making people feel comfortable with making critical decisions, such as clients who are looking to purchase products. Let's see. Oh, this one's from Edith. So I think this might have been your question before. So I've been known to be a great listener and problem solver. I'm a junior at Post University in computer science. I looked at Thermo Fisher for an internship and love the software and IT area. I have many years in management and was good at it because of my listening skills and problem solving skills. Would I have to put my old skills aside to make room for my new and improving skills? Absolutely not. So again, do you have to put old skills aside to make new for new and improving skills? Definitely not. So a lot of the skills that are like authentic to me, that prior to, you know, having an internship experience or getting in the workforce, just in general, right? I've just refined over time and have evolved accordingly, in addition to adding brand new skills that were not authentic to me at that time. So for example, I would say, yeah, great active listener as well, great critical thinker. Something that was not authentic to me like years and years ago was public speaking. I don't know if some of you guys can relate to this, but I remember even in like a classroom format, when it was time for like a group presentation or a solo presentation, I would get that sensation of like, okay, like my body is on fire. I can't wait until I sit down, right? Like this is not my jam. This needs to be over in like 2 minutes. And so that was kind of like the sensation I would have, and like the mindset, right? Which is not the greatest and wouldn't allow me to do, you know, be my best self when I was doing a public speaking thing. However, based on the different experiences that I've had, based on like the strategies I've taken from others in terms of how to be a more eloquent, prepared, engaging public speaker, that's no longer the case. And it hasn't been that way for maybe like a good 10 years or so. But I remember that being a very real and toxic mindset to begin with. But I was able to move past that. So, but in order to be a good public speaker, you also have to be an active listener. So kind of what Edith was saying and what was already organic to me. You also have to be a critical thinker, being good at like thinking on your feet as well and like responding in an articulate way. So those skills just got heightened like to the nth degree in order to be successful in adopting new skills like public speaking. So definitely you don't have to leave anything aside. Ideally, you're just refining them over time because you're trying to find roles, whether it's with Thermo Fisher or with another organization, that again, make you feel like you're having a sense of meaningful work on the day-to-day, having that sense of drive and purpose and engagement. So in order to find that, you first have to figure out, again, what do you enjoy? What are you naturally good at? What does your skill set look like? And how to translate that into a role. And that role, there's a metric out there in HR that role should meet about like 80% or better of your overall desires for what you're looking to do long-term. So that role should be like a stepping stone into your long-term trajectory. With that, I would say I always advise students to do what we call career mapping, where you think about, you know, what's the penultimate role that you would want to have? Maybe I know for some people that looks like a VP. So like work backwards from that vice president role and figure out, how do I get there, right? So maybe that's like 7 roles in between where you are as a student to get to like a VP role or something to that effect. So take inventory of what you want to be ultimately, how to get there working backwards, and then do the reverse to get there. So again, each role that you have should be a stepping stone to get to you where you want to be. And those roles ideally will have an 80% correlation with what you're naturally good at, what you're looking to do, and how you want to grow going forward to take you to that next step. So again, I hope that was helpful. So this one's from, apologies if I say this wrong, I think it's Riley. So you're a sophomore at Mizzou studying biomedical engineering, and you're wondering how to express your personal brand on different platforms. Like what would you put on LinkedIn versus a resume? Ideally for students, and that's a great question, I always say your LinkedIn should match your resume because again, it's a corporate platform as opposed to like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever that is. So because you are in that professional space, ideally your LinkedIn matches your resume. I would say also have like a great headshot. It doesn't have to be a professional. Mine isn't. Mine was taken by a friend, but something that again demonstrates a little bit about your personality. So if you go on LinkedIn and you see my headshot, I have like some nature in the background because I'm big into like sustainability and minimizing my carbon footprint and like all that stuff. So I would have that read a little bit into my picture. And also I know LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to put like a banner behind yourself. Make sure you use that banner for promoting yourself. So for mine, because again, I'm in a corporate role with Thermo Fisher, I have like employer branding running through that banner. But for you as a student, I think 2 of the top things are, one, you can always default to demonstrating school spirit. So maybe you want to put something like Mizzou related, like if you're in a sport there, maybe you want to put something that's sport related or something to that effect. Or for example, and this is one of my favorite stories to tell, similar to being interested in sustainability, last year I was hiring this one student, and it was for an environmental health and safety role. And so his headshot was like, just himself, right? But he used the banner on LinkedIn to have a picture of him and his dog all Patagonia'd up as they were on a hiking trail. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Environmental health and safety. He's in Patagonia gear on a hike with his dog, right? So that said a lot about him personally, like what he values, what he enjoys, like that cross promotion of personal and professional. And it gave me a little bit of insight into like his personality and personal brand. So I would say when you're building out your LinkedIn with your resume, of course, try to mirror the different experiences as you're speaking to them. So there's consistency there, but also think about like the things that you like to get involved with in projecting your headshot, your banner, and then also you're able to feature certain posts that you make on LinkedIn or certain levels of content. If you can, make sure you're highlighting those features on your LinkedIn profile as well. Because for example, one of our interns last summer that I onboarded, who I extended a full-time opportunity to after his internship, he was a marketing major, but on the side, he also has his own company. He's a creative artist. And so he features a lot of his artwork on his LinkedIn profile for people to click on. And so that way they say, oh, okay, like he's in marketing, but he's also has a side hustle as an artist. So I can click on his content. I can buy his stuff separately via his LinkedIn profile. So whatever your brand is, there's a lot of different ways to feature it on your LinkedIn profile. And again, because that's pretty much the corporate version of Instagram, Facebook, all those other socials, I would say make sure that you're building it out as much as possible to have as much visibility going forward.
Okay. Once you get hired on as an intern, what would be your traveling percentage per year percentage?
Okay, so it was a little bit in and out, but if I'm going to try to regurgitate your question. So basically you were saying, when you apply to an internship, what is the travel percentage across that internship? Is that what you said? If you can just confirm that in the Q&A. But I can go ahead and like start speaking to that a little bit. So, oh, I see there's a, yes. Okay, good. That was a question. Okay, so when it comes to, internships and travel, so our interns don't travel. So, I mean, the only travel they're doing is basically to the site. So if you're relocating for an opportunity, we have a relocation stipend that we award to those relevant interns who are coming in. So let's say you're on the West Coast like I am, maybe you're going to one of our internships on the East Coast. Again, there is a relocation package that you can leverage for that. But other than that, you're not traveling once you're there. So everything that you're doing is like 100% at that site. There might be some team events, that you'll get invited to where it's like, oh, like we're having, for example, I know a lot of sales interns, we're having a sales meeting, at this hotel or at this convention center, or we're doing like a conference here or there, right? In like the local area. Then yeah, you'll be traveling with the team to do those things, but it's not travel as in like you are in a position and then they expect you to get on a flight or go anywhere. That's not an expectation for an internship.
Yeah, this Sankalp, I am currently pursuing master's in computer science from University of Texas at Arlington. And this is my second webinar. I have attended your last webinar as well. It was very insightful.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
So yeah, so this is a more of a general question that I have. So the thing is that I have almost 4 years of experience working as a software engineer. And I have experience in multiple fields. Like I have experience with front-end development, back-end development, and mobile application development as well. So I was slightly confused about whether it hurts my chances if I apply for multiple positions in a company for an intern. Because like I have been seeing some of the email responses. I mean, like that suggests me like it may hurt my chances, like applying for multiple positions in the same company. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I appreciate the mindfulness behind that, but it actually won't hurt your chances. So for example, I've had interns that apply to maybe like 4 or 5 roles. And since I particularly recruit for anything that's like operations, procurement, or sales related, regardless of the role they apply to, that's probably going to fall under me. And like for other recruiters that have like, they manage research and development, cybersecurity, anything IT or data science related, if that's what the candidate's interested in, like those roles are going to fall under that recruiter as well, since we're all like segmented by function and the functions that we support. But yeah, that's not going to hurt your chances. I would say, if it's something similar, so like you mentioned, like front end development, right? Like IT related roles, if they're all similar to each other, that's definitely not going to hurt your chances, because it shows that your interests are consistent across a variety of opportunities that we have available, right? If you're applying to things that are just kind of like for the sake of applying that aren't related to each other, then yeah, that recruiter is going to say, wait a second, they're applying to something in IT, but then I see something here that's for like a marketing role, like, what's the interest there, right? But again, to your point, if they're all consistent and, homogenous to each other, like of your interest, then no, there's no way that's going to hurt your chances in any way. Oh, and I just saw a quick message in the chat. Yes, so you can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I know I have that QR code on that slide, but if you search for me on LinkedIn, I am literally the only Gabrielle Ellebrock, the only person with that name, so you will easily find me. And I know we're about a minute out, so I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone who took the time to join today. For those of you who rejoined this session for just like more in-depth analysis about personal brand, thank you. That's awesome. I'd love to hear that. But again, thank you to everyone who joined. Looking forward to connecting with you all. And thank you, Brandon, with Way Up, for facilitating this experience as well. Always a pleasure to partner with you. And that's it for me.